Johnny Carson mastered the art of staying cool under pressure, but some guests pushed him to his absolute limit.
I'm trying to cut through the list, the questions.
Well, forget the list.
All right,
I'm going to get you
think
one
it's
of those.
me?
Yeah. I think you're losing it.
These are the most unhinged guests Johnny Carson ever had. Oliver Reed, the drunk buffoon called out by Carson. Oliver Reed hits the couch instantly spewing sexist remarks.
The women in England are quite good. They're always in the kitchen, so you can't hear them when they shout.
You think that's where they should be?
I really think that most women are happy in the kitchen, not because they like men make the best chefs.
I think if they paid women in the kitchen as much as they pay chefs in a hotel, women would love to be in the kitchen.
I mean, the women's liberationists, if they thought about that. Quiet, woman. Women's liberationists.
Carson later told his producer, Reed can't come on this way. Next time he's back, make sure he's sober. Charles Grodin, the antagonist. Charles treated Carson less like a host and more like an opponent in a debate he's determined to win.
Are you interested in anything at all?
Absolutely. That's why I'm asking.
No,
yes.
no, you're really, no, really. Is there anything in the world that you really, do you lie awake at night and worry about anything that doesn't have to do with the show or yourself?
Yes. I can care about the human condition.
Come on. Like what?
Don't you know what the human condition means?
Yeah, but what do you care about the human condition? You've reduced the entire world situation, Iraq and everything, to an opening monologue.
I suppose the thing is to get it when you can.
Are you whispering again?
Oh, no, you said I'm whispering last time.
Yeah, you talk very softly for me. I don't know why.
Are you hearing me
This is
right
what
in?
you sound like.
okay.
You're talking, you made a book. No, no,
Have you seen those little whisper things that people get who are just on the edge of going completely deaf, where you hear something? I'm going to get you
think
one
it's
of those.
me?
Yeah. I think you're losing it.
You know, when I tried to talk about my book in the hardcover, you said $18.95, that's a lot of money for a book. And I said it's my whole life.
I thought it was. You remember those things, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I didn't know you were that sensitive. You actually remembered that.
I'm so sensitive, I really can't answer a question from someone who's not interested in the question.
I'm very interested in the question. Now, what? It's all right. It's okay. I'm used to it.
He eventually began to visibly piss Johnny off live.
I'm trying to cut through the list, the questions.
Forget the list.
All right.
Johnny admitted to friends, his bit makes me genuinely tense because I never know if he's joking. Peter O'Toole, the charming disaster. Peter O'Toole arrived, wasted one appearance, and told stories that made no sense.
Everyone was rather quiet. Yes, we didn't fly today, and I wonder why we didn't fly today, yes.
But didn't you tell me you
It's all becoming clear.
that you flew on a helicopter today?
I was in the helicopter today, being bounced up and down by some very nice gentlemen about 3 feet from the ground, but not yesterday. But Friday the 13th is
Today.
Carson seemed like he was forced to look like he wanted to be there. Johnny allegedly whispered to friends backstage, O'Toole's brilliant, but hosting him feels like steering a runaway train. Sam Kinison, the screaming maniac.
I wonder a lot of things. Like, are you human? How do you live with yourself? Are you a reptile with a nice hairdo? You snaky tramp! You lied to me! When you told me you love me, you never loved me! You said forever. Remember that one? Oh, there's a joke, forever! Yeah, forever, honey!
If you were doing some preaching, and this was your congregation,
Yeah.
what would you?
Oh, it was very fiery. It was very, I don't know about you, but when I woke up this morning, somebody told me, you don't have to lose. You don't have to be defeated. You can change your life. You know what I'm saying? Kind of stuff.
He yells and detonates without modulation, making Carson play referee. Johnny told Ed McMahon, Kinison's funny, but I spent the whole segment watching for the moment it becomes too much for broadcast. Ed McMahon, the argumentative sidekick. Ed McMahon and Carson slide into a real argument about sharks that doesn't feel like normal desk chatting anymore.
Well, doesn't a shark continually swim? It never stops swimming. The shark never stops swimming. All its life.
What does that got to do with my
Well, I mean,
sweat?
this you say for the first 3 years, this is all its life. It never stops swimming.
But this bird is in the air.
This shark is in the water. Be silly to see a shark flying around.
Wait a minute, I fail to see the logic of this.
A shark never stops swimming.
A shark is buoyed by the water, its own weight. It can rest and move. But in the air, I mean, it's one thing to do this for 3 years. It's another to do this.
The exchange escalates with sharper interruptions and louder insistence until each line is trying to win and not entertain. Carson later joked, "Ed forgot he's the sidekick for a few minutes and it got genuinely uncomfortable." Rodney Dangerfield, the forgotten joke machine. Rodney Dangerfield sits down built for rapid-fire momentum, which is exactly why the derailment feels so exposed when he suddenly loses his place.
When I bought my dog, I got stuck. I got a dumb dog. Well, it took me 2 years. I taught him how to sit. He forgot how to stand. I made progress. I used to work Dominic's black and blue room, and that was just the blue room.
Will you do 2 shows a night there?
2 shows a night, every night except Monday.
I see.
And Monday I'll try to create my own show. No, I don't know, I'm just talking around.
He starts grasping for the next line, repeating fragments, and trying to laugh his way through the stall while the audience realizes something is genuinely off. Carson stays supportive, but the discomfort is that the entire act depends on non-stop flow, and now the engine is sputtering in public. The segment flips from Rodney machine gun set into a live recovery attempt with no clean reset. Johnny tries to help by feeding him setups, but Rodney can't catch the rhythm back. The tension builds because everyone knows Rodney's whole persona is built on never stopping. Tiny Tim, the fragile oddity. Tiny Tim walks out already feeling like he belongs to a different universe than the Tonight Show's normal, polished guest vibe. He sings and rambles with fragile unpredictability, making the studio unsure when to laugh and when to just stare. Carson told his writers, "Tiny Tim's the strangest guest we've ever had, and I mean that in every possible way." Andy Kaufman, the confusion artist. Andy Kaufman walks out presenting himself like a novelty act, then doubles down so hard it becomes unsettling. He commits to the bit with zero reassurance, letting the audience sit in confusion until the payoff finally hits. Johnny reportedly said, "Kaufman makes me work harder than any comic because I have to trust he knows what he's doing." Howie Mandel, the frantic disruptor. Howie Mandel shows up with frantic disruptive energy that turns the couch into a constant interruption machine. He burns through normal interview rhythm, talking fast and pushing bits too hard until the segment feels like it's always one beat away from collapsing. Mandel has since described the experience as the kind of appearance that can quietly cost you future invites because the host doesn't want that level of instability back. Carson stayed professional, but you could see him working overtime to contain the chaos. The segment became infamous because it felt less like controlled comedy and more like someone trying to overpower the format with sheer energy. Chevy Chase, the chair fight instigator. Chevy Chase walks out with cocky physical comedy that turns a simple entrance into an immediate power play. Instead of calmly taking the seat, he leans into a childish tug-of-war over space that turns the couch into a wrestling prop. The fight becomes loud, grabby, and chaotic, like a backstage prank spilling into the broadcast. Carson has to host around movement and interruptions while the guests try to upstage the format itself. The segment stops being an interview and becomes pure physical chaos. Johnny keeps trying to start questions, but the furniture battle won't end. The audience laughs, but you can see Carson getting frustrated. Dan Akroyd, the chair fight escalator. Dan Akroyd matches the chaos beat for beat, treating the chair like a prize instead of a place to sit. He escalates the physical gag with stubborn refusal to settle, keeping the energy agitated instead of letting it return to interview mode. The erratic behavior is how the bit keeps extending every time it should end. It restarts with another shove or grab. Carson's role turns into traffic control, trying to keep it funny and safe and moving. The segment feels unhinged because the guests are performing dominance over the set, not comedy inside the set. Johnny tries multiple times to redirect, but Chevy and Dan won't let the bit die. The whole thing drags on longer than it should because neither guest will back down. Uri Geller, the failed psychic. Uri Geller sits down selling a "you're about to witness something impossible" vibe, but the moment Carson asks him to perform, the confidence starts leaking out. He tries the spoon-bending setup and keeps stalling, then shifts into explanations about why it's not working tonight, which only makes the silence louder. Carson stays polite, but the tension builds because the segment is built around one promised miracle that never arrives. The erratic part is watching Geller bounce between attempts and excuses and visible panic while the audience realizes the trick has nowhere to go. By the end, the performance isn't the feat, it's the meltdown of someone trying to talk his way out of a failed demonstration. Johnny maintains that Carson poker face, but you can sense his amusement at the collapse. Dean Martin, the intoxicated critic. Dean Martin comes on acting like he's the host instead of the guest, immediately needling Carson about his monologue and delivery while slurring through half-finished thoughts. The conversation keeps swerving because Dean's rhythm is off. He corrects himself. Mid-sentence loses the thread, then snaps back with another shot at Johnny. The erratic energy spikes when it becomes obvious Bob Hope is stuck there too, essentially reacting to Dean's drifting chaos. Carson has to keep the show moving while Dean lurches between tips and insults and loose banter that doesn't follow normal interview logic. It's unhinged because the segment feels like Carson managing a party crash on his own set, smiling through it while Dean keeps trying to run the room. Johnny's professionalism prevents him from calling out Dean's condition, but his careful word choices show he's working around it. Orson Welles and Robert Blake. The ego collision. Orson Welles and Robert Blake end up trading jabs in a way that stops feeling like playful ribbing and starts feeling like a real ego collision. Instead of letting Carson guide the pace, they keep turning the focus back on each other, escalating with sharper and sharper digs. Carson's role becomes crowd control because every line threatens to become a new argument or a new humiliation. The erratic behavior is the refusal to settle. Each jab invites another, and the segment keeps tilting away from conversation and toward public duel. The humor lands because it's tense. The audience can sense the edge, and Carson has to navigate it without letting it explode. Johnny tries to redirect with new questions, but both guests ignore him to continue their sparring. The whole thing feels like two alpha males refusing to back down. Brooke Shields, the surprise pratfall. Brooke Shields walks out and commits to a big physical entrance meant to mimic Carson's Karnak-style pratfall, except Carson and the crew don't realize it's a bit. She drops out of frame hard enough that the room instantly flips from laughter to real concern, and Carson physically leans over as if she's actually hurt. The erratic element is the sudden tonal whiplash, a planned joke that lands like an accident, forcing everyone to improvise damage control. Shields has to explain herself while still on the floor, and the segment spends precious seconds recovering the "this is fine" vibe. What makes it so chaotic is that the stunt hijacks the show's normal timing and turns the host into a startled bystander. Johnny's genuine concern shows before he realizes it's performance. Tommy Smothers, the format hijacker. Tommy Smothers comes on and leans into a bit that treats Carson less like the host and more like a character to parody, blurring the line between guest and substitute host. Instead of staying in the normal interview lane, he keeps nudging the segment into "I'm steering now," which forces Carson to decide whether to fight for control or let the chaos play. The erratic behavior is the commitment to the takeover energy. Every beat is designed to derail the expected rhythm. Carson can play along, but the tension comes from watching the format itself get toyed with on live television. It's unhinged in a controlled way. Smothers pushes the boundaries of who's in charge until the segment becomes a contest of timing and dominance. Johnny maintains composure, but you can see him recalculating constantly. Truman Capote, the incoherent tragedy. Truman Capote comes out looking unsteady, and the interview immediately starts slipping because he can't keep coherent rhythm. He trails off slurs through thoughts and makes the conversation feel fragile, like any question could produce dead air or an inappropriate tangent. Carson tries shorter prompts and gentle steering, but Capote's mental thread keeps breaking mid-sentence. The segment becomes uncomfortable because the audience can tell they're not watching a clever eccentric. They're watching someone impaired struggle on live television. It's erratic in the most sobering way, as the host is managing a public collapse while trying not to humiliate the guest. Carson's face shows concern, mixed with professional obligation to keep the show moving. Capote can't finish stories or hold on to a point for more than a few seconds. The studio gets quieter as people realize this isn't a performance. It's someone genuinely not okay. Johnny shortens the segment and tries to end it gracefully, but there's no hiding what everyone just witnessed. The appearance became infamous because it captured a brilliant writer in visible decline. Carson handled it with as much dignity as possible, but couldn't prevent the awkwardness. Viewers at home felt uncomfortable watching someone so clearly struggling. The segment raised questions about responsibility and exploitation in late-night television. Should Carson have stopped the interview? Should producers have prevented it from airing? In hindsight, the whole thing feels like a mistake, but in the moment, Johnny did his best. Capote's appearance became a cautionary tale about booking guests without proper vetting. The Tonight Show prided itself on being safe, controlled entertainment, and this segment was neither. Carson never wanted to humiliate anyone, but sometimes live television exposes things you can't edit out. William Shatner, the theatrical hijacker. William Shatner brings off kilter intensity that can turn a normal couch chat into a one-man performance piece. Instead of staying inside the interview rhythm, he pushes long theatrical monologues and awkward look-at-me beats that make the segment feel hijacked. The erratic energy comes from how he keeps escalating his own presence, talking over the pacing the show needs to breathe. Multiple retrospectives and Shatner's own accounts describe Carson-era friction around that exact problem. He could dominate the time so completely that the interview stops functioning. Carson tries to redirect with questions, but Shatner barrels through them with another story or dramatic pause. The segment becomes about Shatner's performance, and not the actual conversation. Johnny's professionalism prevents him from cutting Shatner off, but his face shows mounting frustration. Shatner seems oblivious to the social cues that he's monopolizing the segment. The audience enjoys the theatrics, but Carson is clearly working harder than he should have to. The whole thing feels unbalanced, like one person decided the rules don't apply to them. Carson later told friends that Shatner was one of the more exhausting guests to host. The segment required constant steering to prevent it from becoming a Shatner solo show. Johnny valued collaboration, and Shatner's approach felt more like commandeering. The appearance demonstrated the difference between a good guest and a difficult one. Good guests understand the host controls the flow and work within that. Shatner treated the couch like a stage where he was the star, and Carson was just the setup man. That fundamental misunderstanding of format made the segment feel perpetually off balance. Carson maintained control, but only through constant effort that shouldn't have been necessary. Marlon Brando and Zaza Gabor. The on-air power struggle. Marlon Brando comes out in a mood that feels unstable, and the segment turns into a clash because Gabor keeps interrupting and pulling focus. The exchange slides from awkward competition into open irritation, with Brando reacting like he's being heckled on his own couch moment. Carson gets stuck moderating two strong personalities who refuse to share space, making the interview feel like a live negotiation instead of entertainment. The erratic behavior is the escalating hostility. Each interruption raises the temperature until the talk show vibe is basically gone. What makes it unforgettable is how quickly it stops being playful and becomes a genuine on-air power struggle that Carson has to end by restoring order. Brando's body language screams annoyance as Gabor talks over him repeatedly. Carson tries to give Brando space, but Gabor won't stop performing for the camera. The tension builds because Brando isn't playing along. He's genuinely bothered by her scene stealing. Gabor seems oblivious to how uncomfortable everyone else is becoming. Johnny's attempts to balance the segment become increasingly desperate as neither guest will yield. The whole thing feels like watching a car crash in slow motion because you know it's going wrong but can't look away. Brando's celebrity status means Carson can't just shut him down, but Gabor's energy makes it impossible to give him floor. The audience doesn't know whether to laugh or cringe as the dynamic deteriorates on live television. What should have been a dream pairing of two Hollywood legends becomes a lesson in incompatible personalities. Carson's professionalism is the only thing preventing complete disaster as he navigates the minefield. The segment ends without resolution, just an awkward transition to commercial that feels like escape. Viewers at home remember it as one of the most uncomfortable guest combinations in Tonight Show history. The clash proved that star power doesn't guarantee good television. Sometimes it guarantees train wreck. Carson learned that certain personalities should never share a couch no matter how famous they are. The Brando and Gabor disaster became shorthand for when casting decisions go horribly wrong. Which of these unhinged guests do you think pushed Johnny the hardest? Like, if you agree, and comment who specifically if you don't. Also be sure to click subscribe below to never miss this channel's upcoming videos.